Real stories with bold creatives. CAPTN OffScript podcast.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to CAPTN OffScript. Today I will be chatting with Jennifer Taback, an Indigenous woman from Canada, an owner, a co-CEO of an Indigenous woman-led design agency in Canada called Design de Plume. You might remember Jennifer. She was a part of the roundtable we had in the first and second episode this season. So Jennifer, welcome to your solo episode.
Thank you so much. You know what? I'm going to give it a pause just for... Does the microphone pick up the dogs?
No, it's okay. No worries.
Okay.
No worries. Dogs are completely fine and well accepted here. So welcome
They've
once
been quiet
again.
all day. Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was such a great conversation last time, and I'm excited to keep the chat going.
Absolutely. So, last time we actually found out a lot about you, some fun stuff, but I would like to start in a different way this time. Since you are an Indigenous woman from Canada, what is one word from your native language that you would use to describe yourself? And if you can, describe the word and say the meaning in English as well.
Oh, what a great question to start with. The first one that comes to mind is actually, I think it might even be a business name of someone I met in the US, and it's Ombe, which means let's go. And I've always had that desire. So that's an Anishinaabewin, which is my language, which is the Anishinaabe people. And it just has such energy to it. And when I heard it, and someone, of course, using it as their company name, I just feel that's the spirit whenever I have in anything I've wanted to do. I've just been like, why not? Let's go. Like, what's holding us back? Let's just do it.
Okay, perfect. That's a really good one. Yeah, I love that. So, apart from driving a bus, apart from being one of those designers who started with Adobe Flash, what else should we know about you and your beginnings in the design industry?
Oh, I think, when you're starting in a career, how you get to that point really kind of frames a lot of what you do. And, the origin story of DDP of my career was really looking at, I had been working in tech a little while, and I just wasn't really happy. I was kind of just going in, I was finishing my work really quickly and just kind of sitting there doing nothing, which for a lot of people, that's fine. But I was like, just kind of grinding my gears. And I took a time to travel. I went to Europe. I, backpacked for a couple, like it was pre-COVID for a long time ago. I backpacked a little bit and just thought, there's something more to life. And I ended up going back to school as an adult, as a mature student into graphic design, wanting to build websites, wanting to get more into I knew about hosting. I knew about how the internet worked, but I wanted to be more about how do you have a voice out there, especially when it was, it was the GeoCities and kind of atmosphere. Yeah. It wasn't that hard to do, but a lot of people didn't have that skill. And so college was really fundamentally it was really changed me and my approach to learning. I had gone to university, ironically, for business, which I still hated. I studied history, but it was this idea of actually being able to do something with my hands, and eventually computers. That made a difference for people who had a problem. They wanted to, get online. They had a message. And I thought, wow, this is such a cool kind of experience. I love technology. I love computers. And it was being able to take that vision and bring it to life. Also, the teachers there were really amazing too, and saying, we wanted to make a magazine at one point, and Ron Beltrami, who was the coordinator of the program, was like, here's this printer, printers are super expensive, go find paper and you can do whatever you want. So we were figuring out how to actually, double-sided print and, the 4-page setups, which was really cool. And we use that, and, I still use that in trying to figure out some of those techniques. And then when we graduated, it was in 2009, global kind of recession time. And I thought, I was thinking back to that saying on Bay, right? There were no jobs. There were absolutely no. I was supposed to move to Toronto. I envisioned a big marketing career at a nice agency, and with my marks and portfolio, totally would have not had an issue, except there was just no cash. So I just started DDP with a friend out of college, not knowing anything, never having worked in an agency, never having had my own business, failing business school, and just kind of planting our 2 feet on the ground and saying, how hard could it be?
Oh,
Very naively. It's apparently a lot harder than I understood at the time, but I think that naivety and that, just kind of attitude carried us through what was 16 years of a pretty fun career.
yeah. No, it's amazing the story because I also I went to a different university. I studied civil engineering. Then I decided I like web design, and why wouldn't I try to do some websites? And at the same year, I registered, as you did in 2009, I registered my business. And as you said, it was a global crisis all over and no jobs, nothing. And I was like, well, how hard could it be, But then as the time goes by, you figure out it's way, way harder than, having a design agency sounds really cool, really fun and everything. But when you go into it and you see all the marketing and all the management and all the paperwork, everything there's to it, it's not the easiest thing to do.
You're the accountant, you're the lawyer, you're, like, oh
Absolutely
my
everything, yes.
goodness. And it only gets worse. The more like popular you get, all of those compound and you have to be,
Yeah.
yeah. It's fun. It's fun. I love it.
Well, yeah, we learned to love it by time, I guess. But you didn't do it alone. You did it with 2 other friends, if I'm right.
Yes, we started college with I had 2 partners, and right now there's 2 of us. So my co-CEO now is Megan Van Harten. And it's kind of interesting. People stay with you through the journey. It changes the vision. And I think, I constantly, when people are like, oh, how are things going? What's the challenges at work? I don't know how solopreneurs or like just one CEO does it, because Megan's been such a rock. Like, we have different talents, we have different strengths. I'm able to kind of like, I don't mind learning finance, I don't mind learning the legal stuff. And she focuses so heavily on the operations, like how do we get our processes, how do we get our designers aligned to the vision. And that's been really kind of amazing at the leadership level too, to have a partnership. And even in the early stages, we've had up to 3 partners at a time, and we'd always get critiqued. People would be like, oh, 3 women, 3 girls,
No.
how do you guys get anything done? I'm like, we get stuff done, quite
Yeah.
quickly. And so it's always been an interesting to have that partnership in a business. And it's just pretty much my work wife. Like, everything is so entwined. And when you're spending, 60 hours a week and
Yeah.
more, if you want to socialize and have a drink or chat about anything, right, in
Yeah.
a
Well,
week with
that's easier
somebody,
than, yeah.
it's sometimes more than I'm sure people spend with their husbands or wives.
Yeah. Well, that was a good thing. I mean, I had my husband, well, a boyfriend back then, and he was also included in everything, really, with advices and
That's hard.
everything. So it was not a solopreneur career I had, but
Yeah.
it's not easy. And I definitely say always, like, especially for women, because at some point kids come through and the family comes, and it's definitely way different than to men. So I always say how much I admire to them, because a couple of weeks back I had Christy Campbell from New Zealand, and she just had a baby like 6 months ago, and she's
Yeah.
already back and everything. And it's just such a huge thing. I mean, I'm sure I would not be able to do it. So
It's an added layer, and it's both Megan and myself. I think we came back around 3 months, just because as an owner in Canada, you don't get the or unemployment benefits. So we don't technically get maternity, even though we pay into a lot of benefit systems. So, if we trusted each other, but we kind of had to plan and kind of had to be back
okay.
a lot quicker. And I'm thankful, past Jennifer worked very hard while her baby was a potato, so that now, things are, a little bit more successful. They're more, streamlined, and that
Okay.
it's nice because I can set my schedule, right? I come to work after having him drop them off at school or getting to leave at earlier so we can have dinner together. It's not always like that, but it's definitely a hard challenge for women in the field, especially when most childcare is still their responsibility
Yeah,
in many situations, on top of, some pretty amazing careers out there too. Such a challenge and
absolutely.
rising to the opportunities.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But apart from that challenge, you also had the challenge, I assume, being First Nation in Canada, even in Canada, which is like kind of one of the friendliest countries in the world. I assume there were a lot of challenges going actually into the career. And how did that affect you, your partners, your work?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting journey. So, I am First Nation, Anishinaabe from Shawnee First Nation, and I'm white passing. You can't necessarily tell my background because my dad and my grandfather's side are from the Ukraine. And it's really interesting because you kind of bump up to different sets of, intersectional challenges being a young woman at the time. Even before we didn't originally brand DDP as an Indigenous company because I didn't feel that would help us in any sense of the word. I was like, we can fly, just,
Okay.
and compete, just kind of in the general, we call it like gen pop, general population, and don't need that distinction because I wasn't 16 years ago, I didn't think that would help us in any capacity. Um, so, and then we quickly encountered in the first couple of years where we had partner, like other competitive organizations in the same city, graduated the same class, had the exact same experience. And if we would bid on a job, we would get told we lost because we didn't have enough experience. And the person who won it, I literally identical, right? But they were men. So I was very quickly, kind of feeling that pressure. And then it was like, you kind of balance this. How do I show up as a person? And I'm a pretty confident person. You get what you get. Um, and it was finding that way and kind of like self marketing, right? And I don't feel confident, and I'm obviously not going to be my best self if I can't be me. So I think probably about 5 or 6 years in, I chatted with Megan and our other partner at the time to say, I think we should self-identify. I think we should start looking at these platforms because I think our clients are going to be First Nation communities, Indigenous communities, who have very specific challenges of being underserved. Like other design agencies come in, they'll do a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 website, and then they leave with no support, not understanding that the economic challenges, the resourcing challenges that person might leave, like the turnover rates could be high. So how do we as a design agency support these big projects? It takes a lot of people power, a lot of investment in time and money. And I hate to see them come in, especially my background a little bit in tech and the internet services is saying, how do you hack your own website so your client can get into it when they legally have paid for everything? So we made that switch. We went through certification process and we started, using that in our own marketing language. And very quickly, like I just felt more centered as a designer, as a communicator. And our staff is not all Indigenous. We have a mixed team, quite diverse in and of itself. But it was articulating that I just wanted to approach design work in a different way. Let's just do it a little bit differently. I want to use the best Western practices. There's some really good stuff there that's been tested. But how do we make it better with um, some Indigenous perspectives on terms of accessibility? We talk about oral history or auditory experiences that often get forgotten about, digitization of elder stories that I can capture and share with people, and then that community can have it as well. And it very quickly resonated, and we started seeing a lot better feedback in our processes and just better relationship with clients solving that specific problem. But it took half a decade to kind of come to that realization that it's the age-old message, like embracing who you are, finding the true what has meaning to you in your background, your lived experience, the people you work with, coming through, the work you do with such passion.
Okay. Oh, that's a really good story because you had to kind of rediscover who you are and bring that into the field without actually thinking about that from the beginning. Yeah, that's. But what were the main challenges you faced actually? Because you worked with other Indigenous people, Indigenous clients, but for example, Canada is one of the most developed countries in the world, but I assume there were still a lot of political issues and disadvantages you had to face along the road.
Yeah, and I think my co-CEO Megan, she calls it the advocacy tax. When I show up as a Indigenous woman in leadership, in my career path with an Indigenous agency, we're often, not just expected, but it's really kind of thrust upon us to consider a lot more things that a regular design agency might not have to worry about. And to me, this was, historical trauma in Canada due to colonization. So making sure that clients understand, a lot of Indigenous people in Canada don't trust the healthcare system because last time they went to hospital, their kids might have not come home from residential schools, and government policy, health
Yes.
policy. And I was sadly explaining to my son, who's learning about the history of Canada through our education system, which is great, why police might not have intervened in a residential school system. And I'm like, explaining that to a 6-year-old is, it's heartbreaking in some sense, but I hope, it brings them a step closer. And we carry this as designers. And when I hire a graphic designer, right, so that they understand if we're working with a community, especially if they're remote, they can only get to certain places by airplane.
Yes.
Climate change affects Indigenous people at a higher percentage than the regular population. More of them experience disabilities. There's this huge list of considerations we have when we approach a project from a communication standpoint that, just our counterparts don't have to carry with them through the work. And I wouldn't say, it's not that it's a disadvantage to us. I think it's really a strength that we can carry that. But it takes a lot of space to be able to come into that, carrying those stories, carrying that understanding. And having, if you are in a space where we work with corporate clients, we work with clients that don't have much Indigenous experience or understanding. And in some cases, we've been in a space where maybe that conversation isn't welcome. They think they want it, but their team is not ready to acknowledge it. And it's hard to remove yourself from that situation because I'm a problem solver. I want people to know, I want them to do better, but you can only go so far in a certain set of circumstances. So recognizing also when you can't do the work that you need to do is hard. So I think it's like this added weight to everything you do. Trying to be compensated for any additional work you have to do as well, to say, well, we have to talk to more people. It might take more time. We had one client we could only really reach by radio, or translators. And it still happens, right? I think with Starlink in the last couple of years, it's definitely improved, but not everyone has access to that. So it really fundamentally makes the approach that we take a lot different. And some people they just don't get why.
Okay. Well, I can imagine. As I said before we started recording, and in Europe, we kind of learn as the history of America starts with Colombo and with not in the best way, and we miss so much of the other things. And as I was doing research for this episode, I found out that there are if I'm not mistaken, over 60 different Indigenous languages only in Canada. And it's such a huge history. And it's, when it comes to design, there's probably so much you can actually give to the community, and so much you can actually bring. And I was going through your work and the stuff you did for Indigenous Tourism Ontario with changing logo for every different part of the year. And it was absolutely amazing when you go into detail, when you go into the symbolism, when you're going into all of that. And that's actually really, really great. And I am super happy to have you here today and because it reaches more people. I had no idea. I mean, I have to admit, and I had really good education, and it's European education. They say it's really
Yeah.
good, and you go through so many things, but actually you don't learn some of those things that are really, really important to some people. So it's really, really great for me, and I learned so many things. I'm not going to try to pronounce. I asked you about your native language, and because it's just, I don't want to disrespect it in a way that it's, but going from there, how did it feel actually to work on so many big projects you did during your career, including the, oh my God, I forgot the name, for the hockey club
Maple
Ontario?
Leafs.
Yes,
Maple
absolutely.
Leafs. Yeah. Yeah. It's been really exciting. And if you were to tell 10 years ago, Jennifer, where I would be today, or the clients who are looking for the team at DDP, I would be like, wow, okay, that does not sound realistic. And I started DDP because, from my background, I really did not have any cash. I didn't have support. I graduated from college, thankfully, with only my student debt from university, but I managed to work through college. I had an expensive computer. And I really wanted just to get to work, and I wanted benefits. I wanted to have some health care. I wanted to not be worried and have my friends have full-time jobs, that could just take care of themselves. It was a very, when you think about it, like kind of just a very low bar to kind of start. It did take some years to get there, but I was really like, there's a very particular point in my mind where I was like, I think we're onto something, and I think we're really good at it, and we could be more successful. And that was during COVID. So, we all know the experience, and thankfully, we all, traumatized by the same thing. Thankfully, I was in an industry that is very digital. We were all, we were working in an office, but, we liquidated fast. We worked from home. And the interesting thing I think that happened with small business, and particularly design, was that geography did not become as much of a barrier. No one really cared where you were because we were all digital. And we got literally a call from Johns Hopkins University in the US, which is one of the largest universities in healthcare, peak of the peak. They literally called us and were like, we want to rebrand our Center for Indian Health logo. Would you be interested in helping XYZ? And I was like, did you call the right place? Why are you calling this? And at the time we were so tiny. And, we started to work, and it really, it kept me up at night. I'm like, why did they call me? And they were like, well, we just Googled. And so I went into kind of this exploratory work at the market in the US, the market in Canada, and realizing that there was no agency at the time who was offering an Indigenous perspective at a level that was big enough to service, a national, international university, a healthcare center. And I had talked with Megan at the time saying, we could do this bigger. We could service larger clients. If we have one who's hunting to find us, there's more who don't know the need of what they have. So it was really taking a look at that. And very quickly after, we got some other big calls. And in the last couple of years, we've been focusing on what parts of our process allow us to be successful in creating those communication strategies, design work, logos, websites. How is it our perspectives fuel that work? How our team brings their own sense of that Indigenous design. And it took me a long time because I was trained, when I went to design school, it was very Western. There was no Indigenous programming at all, which now there is, and it's amazing. So it was for me reconciling also what good design was, and our work for a long time, you didn't see anything in comparison. And I felt weird about that I wasn't producing something that I could hold up and say, this stands with elite award-winning Nike logos, all the things that we get fed as a student. We're not minimalist in any sense. We're maximalist because of the Indigenous background, perspectives, and cultural teachings. And it was this big reconciliation. And and I totally it clicked. I was like, okay, this is why people need this. And seeing that come to John Hopkins and some other clients shortly after, it was seeing that that could fit a global perspective. There's Indigenous people across the world who have had a similar colonization experience. We got to go to Australia last year, and hear stories there. And it felt like we were home, same kind of challenges, different approaches to the problem.
Absolutely, yeah.
But halfway around the world, it was still a very similar conversation of people trying to solve the same problems. And, it's led to people saying things like, we've been following you for 4 or 5 years. We love what you do. Can we talk about the Maple Leafs logo? Would you want to design that? And I think that's every designer's, one of their bucket checklists, right?
Yeah.
National sports team. So, people lost their mind because I live in Northern Ontario, Canada, which the Leafs are very big here. And I don't know if my ex will see this, but it was one of his favorite teams too. So I was just like, you gotta win for the good and maybe the bad. And it was having these people approach us and just fundamentally, not necessarily because of our marketing efforts, but because of our thought process, the consistency of that. And in Canada, it's much more, I'm going to say, in vogue now to pretend to be Indigenous. We do have a problem with people saying, I'm Indigenous, look at me, give me some of that contracting. And so corporations have to be extra careful. They have to try to be able to vet that, know what community you're from, which again, other design agencies don't have to, necessarily contend with such a complex identity matter at the core. So seeing corporations do that work to reach out to us, and be able to support our team through some, economically turbulent times in the last 10 years, not just COVID, we're obviously north of they who shall not be named at the moment, right? Which is a huge part of our economic sector. And we do have clients down there and still maintain them, but not knowing what happens day to day. But being able to weather it, right, I think is a huge success. Having those clients still
Absolutely.
reach out in uncertainty. And it takes a long time to build that trust, where I think 16 years in, it feels a lot easier. It feels, and other agencies are like, oh, well, we could do that in 5. I'm like, I don't think with a certain set of circumstances, I could have done it any quicker, but it still feels good to see those partnerships kind of thriving in this new space as well.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's a huge thing, to even, if we disregard big companies and big name clients, having a business after 16 years and after everything the world went through in the last 16 years, not just, as you said, COVID, but war here, war there, all these political things that are happening around the world. And with all the recessions we had in 2008 and after that as well, and the crisis and the market drops and everything. So just having a business, maintaining it for that much time, it's a huge thing. So that's amazing. But also having really big clients, and also proves how good you are. I mean, it's what I found, because, and not just that, but the way the designs are done. And I've been in that field, in the design industry, and I loved, the tourism logo changes and everything. It's so good, so full of symbolism. Tell us more about it. How did it come to it? What does it all mean, to all of us who are not in Indigenous, who are not in that field? Tell us more about it.
I love talking about this because, like I said, I'm a self-proclaimed minimalist. If there was no outside influence, I would be drawing the, gray circles for companies and selling them $2 million branding packages on that, and that's where I started. And I still like, to see what we produce in terms of, design principle of form following function, right? So we have clients who have big stories to tell. They have a lot of cultural considerations that they want woven into the work. And I think the ITO logo, Indigenous Tourism Ontario logo, literally the most complicated logo system we've ever made. It's crazy. And I'm the one who pitched that. And once we started doing it, I was like, What did we do to
Boy.
ourselves? What did we do to ourselves, you know? And it was really, I think it's just, it shows in the work kind of that in a lot of Indigenous cultures, it's not where minimalism expects you to give you the story. No one can argue about the victory of a Nike logo, right? And I'll pick on that one because it's so easy. But when it comes to Indigenous design and storytelling, the visuals that we have, there is an expectation that the story, that the viewer, that the receiver has some competency and understanding so that you don't have to explain everything to them. So in often sense, this means that our logos, our visuals can be more complicated, because we're going to ground them in certain cultures or certain languages. There's over 60 just Indigenous languages, which is fun when we try to recommend translations for pieces as well. So there's an expectation that the viewer is going to understand what a color might mean, what a symbol might mean, or in my culture, that if there's a strawberry, which I used in the maple leaves, one of our first berries of the spring, for young women, love putting that in the male space. Anishinaabe tend to recognize and they'll know some stories, but if you don't, it's not like it's excluding you. Okay. So you can add this layered nuance in. And the tourism logo is great because there's something like snowshoes, which, if you're in Canada, if you're in a northern climate, they're an Indigenous invention, but you're generally going to know what they are, wintertime, and kind of creating these little symbols that have deeper meaning if you know them. But again, the added challenge of that, it's a tourism place. We're going to obviously be appealing to non-Indigenous people to come to experience, culinary adventures, trips, land-based learning, knowing how to ice fish, hearing stories and teachings of that, and welcoming them into that space so they get a part of it as well. That logo, I can picture it clearly. And it's been interesting because they've reused it. They were, quite down during COVID. We did it right before COVID, but it's been back up there. They've been such a powerhouse, and I've, got to see some of their partnerships, and seeing that logo again in different spaces has been like seeing it work. I think when we did it, seeing such a complicated logo work for them has been really, really exciting.
That's really great. You've also won a lot of awards for your work, for the logos, for the brandings. But I think you mentioned in one of your talks before that DNA Paris was your favorite one, right?
Yeah. So for a long time, we did not win awards. I think the challenge was, again, you see that you have this idea of what good design looks like. As a judge, you have an idea of what good design looks like. And ours, they never fit it. Ours was always the wildest, most complicated, quite, it's in its own vein. And so I'm definitely not a competitive person, but when you enter a few times and you don't get it, you kind of just say, okay, that's not a space for me, right? I can get the hint. And then, we kind of went a couple years in and our team was like, okay, well, this is cool stuff. We should be re-entering them. And I was hesitant because I'm like, why? They take a lot of effort. They cost money, just to be turned down. And it was funny because, the team entered it in the DNA Paris Awards. And I think, a lot of designers know that there's vanity awards, right? You can kind of pay a couple bucks, get awards. It's not a huge thing. So they did a lot of research. Was like, no, it's legit. And when we submitted our case study there for the knowledge basket, which I talked about as well, the IPCA knowledge basket, it was a really special project. We had really approached that with a lot of intention, ground up, speaking with elders, asking what is possible, what isn't possible in a website framework. We put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that. And when it won, I was a little bit shocked. I was like, okay, we are competing in an architecture, not architecture category, but a lot of really Western design, like Swiss, like from Switzerland, like the pinnacle of what Western design looks like. And so I was like, okay, well, we have to go because it's in Paris and, you have to go, especially when I'm from like a small town in Northern Ontario. So we took our team there. And I think it wasn't until we got there and meeting the judges, some of them knew our colleagues, some of them, and they were fighting for that diversity to say good design is more than just a Nike logo. Good design talks about community stories. It shares that, empowers, it represents that diversity. And it honestly, that was the best part, was meeting the judges and finally seeing that advocacy at that level for design work. The best design work meets the needs. Simple, and then it
Absolutely.
can be, and then it's beautiful on top of it, right? And that's where I think awards have a good highlight of saying it solved a problem super successfully and it was gorgeous. And it looked, by some sense of aesthetics, a beautiful mark of that project. So that was really meaningful to me to see that the international judges understood that, and that they were also, because I've been in judging for competitions, and it's not just, okay, here's your points. Usually by the end, there's a conversation about, okay, we have this crew of 10, now let's just talk about it. And that at some point, probably someone had to articulate, okay, we want this because of X, Y, Z. And that they were, empowered to do that, had the confidence to do that. And it shows that that work is award-winning in its own way, but I hope that it also shows other designers who work might not necessarily look like their students beside them or their peers, that there's a place for it, and the diversity of what good design is really expanding as the world kind of shrinks in on itself even more in the last couple of years.
Oh, that's a really, really good story, because you didn't expect it. You already kind of gave up on that, and then it came, and I can imagine how it goes.
And it's not a small one. Like, it was so fancy. I'd never been to an award thing that was quite that level. Europeans know how to throw a party, you know what I mean? And the
Yeah,
French, like, let's
that's
just
true.
say,
That's true.
so,
That's
and to
absolutely true.
and to share it with the team too, like we brought our team over and kind of had, a nice little trip out of it as well. It was just
No,
icing
that's
on the cake.
yeah, that's really good. How big is DDP right now?
I think we're at 17 or 18. We usually hover around there.
Wow.
So yes,
Wow, that's huge.
I think, yeah, you know what? And I think we're the largest agency of our size and type in Canada right now, doing specifically graphic design. So that, as I realized as we kind of passed the 5-6 people, that it's not quite small for a design agency anymore to be
No.
kind of in that middle ground. We're not quite 60 people, but it's a fair number of people doing that work.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I remember back like 2013, 14, I had like 15 people at one
Oh my
point,
goodness.
and it was, yeah, 15. It was a lot to deal with, a lot of management, a lot of paperwork and everything. So that's huge, really. I mean, congrats. I didn't know. I was like figuring it out along the way, but that's that's really good, and that's even more of a success, I would say, after all this time being so big, and that's really good.
And I thought, like, maybe before COVID, so we had bought a building, like a big, nice office building, which we still have, just before COVID. And I thought, that we'll have lots of people in that space. You'll probably have like 40 people at some point. But I think like the size of 20 people, that is more geographically diverse as well. Canada, as you know, is a gigantic place. I just flew from the East Coast to Calgary, and it's so big. It takes so long to get around. And being able to support those people in their home communities, if they want to stay there, if they want to be in a city, has been a good opportunity too, with a team of that size and having talent. So it's very hard, obviously, to find Indigenous professionals. They're just disadvantaged in the area. We try to encourage it with mentorship, scholarships, as much work as we can. But giving them also the option to work, without having to move to an urban center or just move away from what they know, I think is also advantageous in a career like ours. You don't have to be in person anymore, so that's
Yeah,
also nice for our team in such a gigantic place. Not population wise, but definitely a lot
yeah,
of land
yeah,
between
but
us.
the space is huge. That's, I mean, I'm stunned, like, so many people and such a huge thing. But apart from that, apart from DDP, Um, who is Jennifer? Who is Jennifer after work? Who is Jennifer when you don't really think about work? What do you do? What are the hobbies? What do you do in your day-to-day life?
Oh my goodness, not think about work? Like, that's I don't know. I was just laughing with Megan
Almost
because normally
impossible, I know,
I
right?
know. I told her we've had a busy week. It's been a little bit stressful, and I told her that tomorrow I'll come hang out. And I said we're not going to talk about work, right? She's like, we're going to talk about work. I'm like,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, I have my son Everett. He's 6, so I spend a lot of time with him. And I also, it's been great because the last couple of years I have been learning how to do beadwork, earrings, and jewelry. And we often, it's been great to hang out with my mother Debbie Taback and my sister Julia Taback because we kind of all do our own thing, and then we'll
Okay.
go to little craft shows. Another like not another little business, but it's a great chance to hang out, to get to do. It's a creative thing where again I get to express myself. It's something that can be a little bit technical as well. Um, and to be able to, you make a couple of bucks off that. We've also used it as gifts for clients, and for
Oh,
artwork
that's
in our
nice.
own thing. Those side gigs that we all love. Um, and then I do love to travel. So that's, I think it's been so lucky because I was laughing. Everett, he comes with us. Sometimes we get to take our kids on our business trips. So he has already been, I think he's logged more miles than I have by the time I was 30. He's been to
Oh, wow.
Hawaii with us for a conference. He's been out east with us, and getting to show him the world where when I grew up, my circle was much, much smaller. So being able to show him kind of that potential and honestly, how small the world is, even though we talk about how big it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and hopefully instilling in him a little bit of that ambition of work hard, play harder. He knows, I know he sees how often I'm on the road or working some late nights or just, how much I talk about work. But it's been great to also kind of have the benefits of working, while of traveling while working. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity, right? If you weren't a business owner, if you were just kind of working your 9 to 5, to be able to see that much of the world and hang out with cool people and clients, and do your own thing too as well. We're going to try to go to Scotland is the spring trip. So
Oh, that's
I've been there
nice.
a couple times, a little closer to where you are, not quite there, but
Yeah.
go see some castles. So I love all that history stuff still. Even though I failed history, I still love to go check it out.
Okay, okay. No, that's really nice. And so 6, he's already in school, or
Here he's in grade 1, yeah. So we just did parent-teacher interviews. So it's yes, when people say with their kids, I'm at the age where I'm like, yep, time flies. Like, how are they this big already? So
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's. I mean, I have a nephew, and he's now 8 years. I mean, me and my husband, we were talking like, oh, he's 7, and then he said, no, I'm 8. Like
I'm like,
since
what
when?
happened?
Yeah,
How did I lose a year?
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
Or
really
they spring
crazy.
up like 6 inches. You're like, why are you like you were
Yeah, yeah, and we
I
see
get
him
it.
like twice a year. They come here, and it's really like, oh my god, you're so big. Like when, how? Yeah,
I'm
it's
like, yeah. You gotta see all those gray hairs as everybody, ages
yeah,
around. Yeah, just like
the same here. No worries. Yeah, so it's really cool. Um, does he have any like desire towards design, towards creativity, or he's more kind of a, I don't know.
he keeps saying that he wants to work at Design de Plume when he's older. And I'm like, that is so
Oh,
cute. That hopefully seeing his mom not be too stressed out sometimes, sure when we're dealing with client work or, that kind of stuff. Maybe some swear words have slipped out, in
yeah,
conversation. But that hopefully he sees my passion for it. He's always been like, I want to do what you do. And I'm like, well, for him, he can do whatever he wants. He's not tied to a family business of any kind, but
yeah,
it's still so nice to see that he likes and my job, obviously not design in most of the sense, talking with new clients, doing a little bit more of the strategy, what things should look like. That he sees that and finds it really interesting, even as a 6-year-old, who I'm still competing with astronauts and I'm sure like
yeah,
zookeepers,
yeah. Well,
whatever is on the list of what I want to be when I grow up. It
that's
always
really
makes me feel good.
yeah, yeah. Do you miss design? How much do you design nowadays?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say probably when we started hiring our first employees, there was discussion among the three of us at the time. I was managing the books, a lot of new business, talking to clients, managing staff, that sort of thing. And I was the first one to say, I don't think I can physically sit at my desk sketching anymore. I think that we do need someone, because there were just the three of us thinking about it. I think a programmer was our first hire. And I also did the programming. So I was like, at some point, we
Oh,
got to
okay.
give up something. So I was the first one to make that call. And I think, when you see a business journey, especially of a business that's growing, the idea of being able to delegate tasks, to empower other people with your ways of thinking is critical for scalability, for success,
Yes.
for redundancy, right? What happens if I get sick? I don't, the train can't stop moving. So that was, a big change to say I'm going to show up and not do a logo anymore. It's kind of wild to wrap your head around. And I think that's really kind of moves you from a designer to the entrepreneur category. And Megan, bless her heart, she embraced it, saying, yes, you're really good at that. You can understand the finances. You're really good at talking to clients and getting them excited about what we do and why our being different is in their best interest. And that they took the, kind of the brunt of the workload in their own way for those couple of years. And then it was also Megan's turn at some point to say, okay, she's going to step up into operations to talk about refining our process, because we did really have to write them from scratch. What we learned in school, what we learned in initial kind of marketing practices did us okay, but there was definitely tension. Community engagement can take a long time. If there's a death in one of our communities, you're not back to work in 2 days. Sometimes that person is off for several weeks, and that can hold up a project, and you have to be able to liaison with the client and respect that. So how do we build that understanding? And I think in some ways, I've always been a creative, artistic person. I love putting pen to paper. I love doing lettering and calligraphy and my beadwork. But I think it feels really good when you step into the space of, I want to teach others. I want to have staff. I want to hire people who are smarter than me, right? There are designers out there who know the tech better than me, who were taught Indigenous ways of thinking in their own college. That happened now where I didn't have that advantage. So I hope that I hire people who are 10 steps ahead of me in some sense. And all I need to do is put, a little bit of critical thinking around it. And I think also, even though I made that decision at the time and it felt really weird, it felt maybe like you were abandoning a little piece of you as a designer.
Give something and delegate,
It doesn't, yeah. And so now it's been really exciting because Ashley, one of our designers, helped me with the Maple Leafs logo, where I said I really have to be much more part of the process in this. So I was sketching and she was working with me on the vectoring, and I got to tell her some of the stories and the meaning, and saying like, okay, I don't want it like this because we have it braided, mind, body, spirit for sweetgrass. So can we represent that? And I would sketch it. And then she would come back with the most amazing, the icons that you would see based on what are crappy sketches now. And just to be able to see that is really inspiring. So being able to let go, it's letting go of that control, that ego, and really just saying, I want to surround myself with smart, capable people who can carry that work, even if I'm not here, that hopefully they're better designers, they're better business people. And we try to leave our clients like that as well. Hopefully when I leave a project, they're more culturally competent than when we started as well. Not an easy thing to do. And a lot of people, when I talk to other leaders or entrepreneurs, they call it like jumping the gap, jumping the chasm, right? You literally don't know what's on the other side because they don't teach you in high school. Your parents probably never prepared you to be a CEO or an entrepreneur. Design school might have taught you about contracts and process. They did not teach you about delegation of creative ideas. How do you talk to a junior designer, and I've been saying it a lot in the last little while, but apparently people can't read my mind. I actually have to have a good explanation, right? They don't just know what I want from them. And those are all, like soft interpersonal skills, hard critical skills that have to come together very quickly after you say, I'm not going to be an employee anymore. I'm not going to be an employee anymore. I'm going to be a leader in this organization.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good one, and I love the thing you said about letting go of your ego, actually. And that's one of the things that last week I spoke to CEO of Creative Market, and week before that it was Christy Campbell, I mentioned her, and they all said the same thing. When you have
Yeah.
to delegate and when you actually employ first people and starting to give the work to others, it's actually letting go of the ego and
Yeah.
knowing that they might actually do things better. As you said,
Yeah.
you had designers that had Indigenous perspectives in their school, in their design education right now in Canada. So they might know better. So it's just, yeah, I love that part that you said.
And hopefully they do know better. I'm always like, I hope you are smarter than me, because there's some big problems, and but it's exciting too. It's exciting too, like seeing, like we talked about the awards, but our awards is our team, right? Like I might come in and get a client, I might articulate, but if that work does not sing from our team, that's, it's a critical component there. And it's been so exciting to see people come into our space. And at one point I've had consultants of all kinds just to be like, I don't know what I don't know. So talk to me about what a standard design agency looks like. And at one point we got told, okay, well, a designer would probably stay at an agency for 2 years and then you can let them go. And I was like, what? By 2 years, they probably just understand what I need to do.
Yes.
So having those realizations too, that probably our investment in a team is a little bit different than the freelancer gig economy or bouncing around agencies, especially being in Canada as opposed to a major city center, like Europe, the designers that come out of Spain and Mexico, and I would say there's a higher concentration per capita than there is in Canada. So I'm like, that will kill me if I have to get rid of designers for fresh ideas. It just won't happen.
Yeah. What was the biggest lesson you actually learned during all these years in DDP?
Oh my goodness, the biggest lesson. I think, honestly, it's trying not to care about what other people think as much. Again, it's pretty simple, but once we started stepping in saying, okay, I'm going to do this differently. And I had a chat with a mentor for a little bit, and I came to him just being like, I feel so angry all the time. You're dealing sometimes with racism, with sexism, with corporations who don't understand, people who don't get what I'm trying to do. Why does design suck? Why does business suck? Why does all of this kind of suck? And I just don't understand why we're at the point, in my career where I am. And he just was like, okay, well, you're a contrarian. You have to understand the rules before you accept them. And, he gave me some literature about what this was. And I was like, oh my goodness. So there's a reason why I always feel like, okay, well, I'm just going to do this my own way. But that's hard when you don't see yourself represented. A lot of other Indigenous women out there. If you're a white dude in America, you got an easy path of, just be a dick, just get people, tell them what you want and you'll get it. But that was never my approach. I always said that we're more a soft sell. I'm not going to be in your face telling you what you need. I want to listen first. And I want to understand why before I make any suggestions. And that really gave me some sense of peace. And I wish that probably would have given success earlier if I could say, no, I don't want to pretend to have to be men to get this contract. I don't want to have to pretend something I'm not, or not even highlight what we really, really can do. And like I said, it's probably a very cliche, just being yourself, right? And that comes, I think, with age, with experience. Jennifer 16 years ago, still just, I had the confidence to say, well, I'm just going to try whatever. Like, how hard can it be to run a company? Like we talked about. But I wish I leaned into that earlier, and I hope that now people, when they come out, when we hire them, when I go out to talk, when I sit as the chair of the board at Cambridge College too, that when they see a younger woman who's there taking advantage of the opportunities that are given to them, that they say yes faster, and people fail. They can fail pretty hard, but most likely you're not even going to. No one's going to care if you do something wrong,
That's so true.
It's really not going to be as bad as you think it is. So that's been a good lesson, and one we're still trying to take. And opportunities like this, Alan, are amazing to be able just to get out and chat. Even if people are intimidated, just take those shots, get out there, chat with people, and ask for what you want.
That's true, really. I mean, I mentioned it before, and a lot of my guests said that they would never say I'm an introvert, but I totally am. And
Yeah.
honestly, who cares if I make a mistake here and there? It's just, no one will really bother. Everyone is kind of um, too focused on themselves as well. So, yeah, everyone is thinking about how they appear, how they work, about their own work. So, yeah, failures are not a thing that most people see when you look at other businesses, and I mean, it's just not that thing that impresses anyone anymore. I mean, we all fail. We have all failed, and if you want to have a successful business, you have to fail at some point. That something will not work as you want it to work, or this employee will not be the perfect fit. So you failed as a manager, or there's so many things. So yeah, I mean, as an introvert, for me, even showing up like this is one of those things that is still kind of scary. So, but yeah, I mean, just do your own thing, and I definitely agree with that, and don't care too much about what others think. Yeah.
And I love when you talk about failing. They make the best stories. Like when I tell people I failed out of business school, it seems funny now. I might have been crying now, but now I'm like, I should have stayed one more semester,
Yeah,
but it really makes you who you are too. And in the day and age of social media where everything is literally perfect, like fail fast, go do whatever, like experience the world. And yeah, especially as an introvert, like like I said last time, I align with that. It's hard for me to be out for too long, but it feels good at the end of the day. I do have to go recharge, but
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
nice feeling.
I know. I absolutely understand it. And right now, I'll probably go have a small nap after this. I mean, it
Recharge.
always works for me. Yeah, just like to relax the mind and to have it. And it's always like that. I mean, even after the first session, I had it. The first episode was like a bit more than a year ago. And
Yeah.
I did it like all by myself. I didn't even think it would be a podcast. I just went live on Instagram, and it was such a huge stress for me. I think 2 hours after that, I was like in the living room figuring out what happened and why did I do it, But yeah, here we are, but more than a year later, and it's all cool stuff. So why not? Yeah.
Yeah, it's such amazing success and gonna highlight like great people on there. Like it's amazing.
Yeah. You mentioned that part as the big lesson, one of the biggest lessons you learned. Is that also the advice you would give to others? Like, if you could give just one, is that the one, or you have something else for us?
I would say don't be afraid to experiment either. Like the design field is huge. And the only reason why I realized that entrepreneurship was an option was because in college we had the Registered Graphic Designers of Canada, who I'm accredited through. They had two sisters, come to speak about their company, and they were young women. They were programming and doing web development, and I was just like, it clicked, right? You could have a company doing this, which was great because, as we know, a year or two later, I had to stay
Yeah, yeah.
afloat. But I think it's just not being afraid, especially as a designer. Like, I think we talked in our last conversation about like specializing versus not,
Yes.
and I'm honestly glad. Like I would say our specialization is Indigenous design, which is a great niche to be in. But the actual technical skills are so varied. And I think the best designers, have played around in a lot of fields, have failed, have done their own thing, right?
Absolutely.
Especially in our last conversations, like, don't be afraid to change your mind. There's no the sunk cost fallacy, right? Even though you spent a lot of time on it, it's try different things. And I think even when I was younger, being able to travel, backpack, to say this career is not for me. I could have stayed, I could have had a pretty standard job with okay benefits. If I didn't take the risk of saying I literally can't be here, I'm gonna I don't want to be. I don't want to hate my job, was my fundamental thing. I need to wake up with a purpose. And in a design field, you're really never stuck. like if you're a graphic designer, we brushed up against, we're doing some manufacturing right now for a carpet company, which I was just like,
Yes, you
I,
mentioned
t-
that.
I toured printing presses and now we're touring manufacturing machines, and just seeing that. And I think, there's obviously some people who are hyper fixated on specific items of design, but for most people, I think having such an open field where, there's a good career in so many things. And honestly, when you graduate, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was 18 years old. When I was
Absolutely.
30, when I was 35, I kind of had an idea, and even if people said now, like, I absolutely love what I do, but if I had to pivot, I would be ready for the next thing because you don't know what's going to happen. And I think design just attracts such amazing people with the ability to lifelong learn that just, play around. If you're not happy with something, change it.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that one. I love it. It's a really good one because I do type design and
Yeah.
it's my main work, but I also see, and I'm not judging, I see so many type designers who are also doing kind of a niche and doing one
Yeah.
kind of types and typefaces and fonts and everything. While I do actually try to explore, all the different things. I mean, for me, the question is, why limit myself?
Yeah.
So even though it's kind of a niche on its own, type design, typefaces, it's, you draw letters, how different can they be? But actually there are so many different techniques and everything. And I don't want to limit myself, as you said. So try different things. And I love that. It's something that I do in my own work, so it resonates definitely a lot.
And you never have to be tied. I'm so afraid because I'm a hyper fixation person. Like if I get on something, I feel like I have to be the best at it. But again, maybe with a bit of age, I've been like, oh, I loved, we learned typography in school. Obviously, I love that. And I got into a little bit of calligraphy to see, okay, what is the idea of drawing versus, actually creating a full set? And what does that mean for my design in terms of shape and flow? And even though I never got anywhere decent at it, it gives me a sense of appreciation, right? And it makes I think my work better. Or when I critique someone's work, I understand a little piece of it.
Yeah,
Even
absolutely.
if you are a jack of all trades, which has been hard for me too with like the Instagram, the social media. I'm just seeing everything but be so perfect, and that's all
Yeah,
they
so
do.
perfect.
For a majority of us, like, no, dabble in it, play a little bit and then move
Absolutely.
on to the next thing and just have fun with it, right? Have fun with it.
Well, that's a perfect ending, honestly. I love it. Thank you so much for your insights. Thank you so much for these advices. It's for me definitely it resonates so much because it's something I base my work on, and I definitely had so much fun today with you. I could go on and on and on, but we all have, work to do and kids to pick up and everything.
Work.
So as
Yeah.
you said, it was a tough week. It's Friday, so yeah, try and relax a bit and at least half an hour no thinking about work if it's possible. Yeah,
Oh yes, it's always a good time. I'm happy it's the weekend, so it's a good way to end the day.
yeah. Well, thank you, Jennifer, so much. It was such a pleasure. I'm sure everyone will enjoy the episode, and I'm definitely looking forward to talking to you again.
Thanks so much, Alan. I always appreciate these conversations. They're a highlight for me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Real stories with bold creatives. Captain OffScript Podcast.